A new stimulus bill is set to be debuted later today, Mitch McConnell represents. So everything new is coming out. Well, except Nancy Pelosi's hairstyle. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is LALATE. Hope you're good and safe. This is Afternoons LALATE, our part of our 2-hour programming block every afternoon, starting at 3:30 with a check, then going to hazard pay. 30 minutes after this video will be unemployment benefits, so you need to really tune into that video. I'm going over incredible new developments about LWA, PUA, enhanced unemployment benefits, UI. I know you have a lot of questions, so tune into that video. Make it popular once again. And then finally, rent. This is part of our 3.5-hour programming block every day on LALATE. Thank you for tuning into this morning's show, which was really our most watched ever. If you haven't already, subscribe and like this video to be part of this Purple Power community. Let's get to the incredible details about hazard pay and what you'd expect this week and later this month. I've been reporting for upwards of about a week that you should not expect to see hazard pay in the bill that's set to be debuted as early as today. Mitch McConnell issued a statement minutes ago, which I detailed on the video right before this, in which he says he's introducing the bill today. So if that's true, this is a written statement from him. It's not an oral statement. It's not an off-the-record statement. It's a written press release from him saying the bill will be introduced today. If that's true, then perhaps at the time that you watch this video, the bill will have already been introduced. Introduced, what I mean by that, is actually put into the Senate of the U.S. Congress. As a senator and as head of the Republican leadership in the Senate, the bill authored by Mitch McConnell will have provisions in it McConnell represents, but it is not expected to have hazard pay. So where will hazard pay land, and where could it land? Well, I've been reporting for over a week that Meadows, Mnuchin, and others have said that the more difficult issues that people cannot agree upon will likely be in the next stimulus package, which you can also call the third stimulus package, which will be later this month at earliest, and if not, maybe early October. The reason why is because they want to get the easiest stuff done now, stimulus checks, enhanced unemployment benefits, and the harder stuff, like food, like state and local, and like hazard pay and rent aid, in the next round. It's ironic, though, that it comes on the heel of this. Minutes ago, Andrew Cuomo issued a scathing statement about the White House, and the White House fired back. And it was in the context of both a mixture of hazard pay and a mixture of the state and local debate. He basically said, Andrew Cuomo, that the state of New York is hurting because of Trump. But he didn't use the words hurting. He actually used a more vigorous word. Trump is actively trying to kill New York City. There's a war on cities. It's an unsustainable position for the federal government, Cuomo said in a statement minutes ago. Either this president will figure it out or the next president will figure it out. If this Congress doesn't figure it out, there'll be a mayhem in this country and there'll be a different Congress in January. That is my political opinion. He said the president caused COVID outbreak to New York and moved too little too late. And he said his use of CDC has been incompetent. Now, what's interesting here is that this is sort of a mixture of hazard pay and a mixture of state and local. The real trouble that Cuomo is now having, and certainly Pelosi, is that the state and local argument is falling apart. Let me explain what it is, because it's sometimes not inherently clear. And if you're new to this channel, this is one of the most important things of the second stimulus. The reason why your second stimulus checks have not landed in your bank account, both Republicans and Democrats agree, is because of a provision in the second stimulus package that's for states and local governments, which are counties and cities. Under the second stimulus package, there was a provision that allocated a lot of money written by Democrats And the Republicans didn't like it. What's unfortunate is that everyone involved, the first time around, put stimulus checks in this big box, the stimulus package. And in that package had this incredible thing, allocation, for state and local. And I say incredible because it's so large. It's nearly $1 trillion. It's $915 billion. Now, of that amount, the vast majority of it is being requested by one person and one state, New York. Suddenly, your entire stimulus checks, if you're in Idaho or Ohio or Oklahoma or Nebraska or Montana or Texas or Indiana, Florida, are being held up by one guy and one state. His name is Andrew Cuomo, and the state is New York. Why do I say this? It's not a personal message. It's a factual message. Two nonpartisan third-party reports were published in the last 2 weeks, and I've detailed them on this channel. They are the Governors Association's report and the Moody's Analytics report. And they went through what amount of money states need. And they did each state one by one. And guess what? Most states weren't even at $1 billion. They weren't even at $500 million. They weren't even at a quarter of $1 billion. It was that small. They were in tens of twenties of millions of dollars, not even $100 billion, not even $100 million. How much did New York need? Upwards of $90 billion. Are we suddenly bailing out one state? Are we suddenly just running around and spending more money disproportionately on one state than everyone else? If this sounds familiar, it should. Under the first stimulus package back in March, before this channel even existed, Andrew Cuomo said that it's not fair that every state should generally get the same amount of money. Some states are impacted more by COVID-19. That was an untrue statement by him, because ultimately what he wanted to do was to be given more money, not because of COVID-19, but because of budget shortfalls than any other state nationally. What's going on here is the following. When COVID hit, states were shut down. And because the states were shut down, they did not have allocation of revenue coming in from businesses. And without that revenue from businesses, they had a financial shortfall. The financial shortfall is about $150 billion nationwide. The Republicans have offered $300 billion. What do the Democrats want? $915 billion. The White House fumed back and said that Cuomo is misguided about hazard pay, is misguided about frontline workers, is misguided about staying local. Governor Cuomo seems paranoid. Every time that New York and New York City has needed something, President Trump has delivered, said White House spokesperson Judd Deere. I'm sorry. I was thinking the tractor. The only people trying to harm New York City are the liberal politicians and their failed big government policies. And there you go. Ironically, the amount of money needed to pass a second stimulus package with state and local money is about $150 billion. The Republicans have offered $300 billion, and Nancy Pelosi will never, ever have a press conference at which she tells you the amount that she needs. She's never said the word $915 billion. She just doesn't want you to hear it. She thinks that if she doesn't mention it, you won't know how much it is. She thinks if she doesn't mention it, you'll just sort of assume she's telling the truth, and then the number is true and correct. She also won't tell you how she got that number and where the number is grounded in. As you now know, the number is not grounded in reason. In fact, the Moody's Analytics report said that what Pelosi's trying to do is give 3 years of grant money to New York. Can you imagine? She wants to give 3 years of grant money to New York, but doesn't even want to give you more than a 1-month stimulus check? Who is she? It's not a democratic principle. It absolutely is not. To think that you were put into lockdown in March and that Democrats proposed stimulus checks every month for 6 months until the pandemic improved or until unemployment went down. Guess what? Pandemic hasn't improved. Unemployment has not gone down enough. Well, gone down enough that it's back at pre-COVID levels. Hasn't happened. But what do? Her leadership, when presented a bill like the Harris and Sanders bill, $2,000 every month for 6 months, or until the pandemic improves or goes away, or unemployment goes down to pre-pandemic levels, what did Pelosi do? She threw the bill away. She didn't want it to be voted upon. She didn't want to hear about it. Now, understand it's a Senate bill. I fully understand that. That she didn't want that part of the discussion. Did she encompass multiple stimulus checks in her proposal? No. Did she propose any grant money for you, that would cover you for multiple months? No. But she wants to bail out states by giving them grant money not for 3 months, but for 3 years. It's with that people sort of wonder what's going to happen with hazard pay. Hazard pay seems on its face to be really great, and what I've always worried for you about is we don't really know the backside of hazard pay. I had a person, send me a DM or a tweet or something in the last few hours, said, I'm a truck driver. When can I get some hazard pay? It's that type of hopeful wishing that I'm worried about. Reviewers think that there is hazard pay there for them to get, and it's been set up by Nancy Pelosi, and you can go get hazard pay. It sounds really good. It's not so good. On the back end, there's concerns about will you ever get the money? There's concerns about that there's enough funds. There's concerns about whether the employer will apply. Hazard pay is a great idea. It's a great provision of the second stimulus package introduced by Democrats, but the authoring of it is questionable at minimum. First, you can't apply for it. Your employer has to apply for it. No, your employer may apply for it. Second, your employer does not have to apply for it. Third, if your employer does not apply for it, tough luck. Fourth, we simply just don't know how much money there is in this hazard pay fund. Fifth, we don't know to what extent the hazard pay fund has been particularly apportioned correctly to compensate for all the number of applicants. For example, could a grocery union with 200,000 employees nationwide eat up 25% of the hazard pay bill in 10 seconds by putting 200,000 applications in within 15 minutes. Ultimately, what you have to stay focused about is you still may get hazard pay. How much is it? How could you get the amount of money, and how could it land in your bank account? It's upwards of $10,000. It's $10,000 that would land in your bank account if you worked as an essential worker during the pandemic, but there's certain qualifications, certain thresholds, certain calculations you have to know, and not everyone could get the money. Let's go over those right away once again. First, if you worked during the pandemic from all the way back to January to the present, you qualify potentially. Next, it's for any hours you work from January up to the present to reach a threshold, and that threshold can be up to $10,000 if you made less than $100,000 last year as an essential worker, and if you made over $100,000 and you qualify to up to $5,000. Third, there are certain type of people that qualify and other types of people who don't qualify. The industries that qualify are grocery, pharmacy, medical, shipping, driving, agricultural, food preparation. Those are the ones that clearly apply. It's not so much task, it's actually more specific to the industry. So for example, if you worked in a pharmacy and you clean the floors, you certainly qualify. You don't have to be a pharmacist to actually get hazard pay. Your employer would apply for it. It would be $13 an hour based upon the number of hours you worked all the way up to the present. If you're not at the threshold, you would make that money going forward. It's a lot of money. It would land in your bank account lump sum, and it's a lot of money that viewers have hoped for and wanted. But, in a universe in which no one seems to be giving you much of anything in the stimulus round, and people are trying to struggle to get a $1,200 check, and you don't see Democrats Democrats rolling over to send out stimulus checks, do you see there's any sort of leadership to give you $10,000 per person? I don't see it. I can't sit back and say that I think that hazard pay is ever going to pass, because at the moment I don't see any push to get it done. Second, I don't see that there's any push to ever get anyone any great sum of money in this stimulus situation. You know, whether it was EIDL grant that was supposed to give you $10,000 per applicant and was changed to $1,200 to $1,000 per employee per business, whether it was PPP that sort of turned into a debacle, whether it was calls for multiple stimulus checks that turned into one stimulus check, whether it was dependent stimulus checks that certainly weren't even given to adult dependents the first time around, and that this time around there was calls to maybe do it at $500. Every single thing seems to do things cheaper. And so if I'm to sit here and say, yeah, you're going to get $10,000, I would be naive. I would be, pushing something that I really don't think is going to happen. Does that mean that I don't think hazard pay is going to happen? No. Does it mean that I don't think that hazard pay is going to happen at all? No. I do think hazard pay is going to happen. I just don't think $10,000, I just don't see this Congress ever allocating $10,000 for hundreds of millions of employees across the country. It's a call for an incredible sum of money, and I don't see it happening. Perhaps a smaller amount of money, or a bill that is more narrowly tailored, that doesn't include as many types of works, a type of people, would be more logical. And I really don't want to call out any particular industry that is listed as the essential workers in that bill. I personally have opinions of a few of them that shouldn't be in there. There weren't frontline workers. They weren't working during the pandemic, at least not here in Los Angeles. They were shut down. So I really don't know why they're even in the bill. And there's certainly other ones that I think should have been in the bill and aren't in the bill. So that we have that twist as well. Coming up next after this is unemployment. Please stay tuned for that. Go to the front of this channel and hit the subscribe and alert button. We're trying to reach 250,000 subscribers. We're now at 240. No one in the history of YouTube has ever done this. Next, like this video. Liking the video helps the video appear higher in the algorithm. If you have questions about unemployment, if you have questions about PUA or UI, stay tuned to the video right after this, 30 minutes after this one, and then finally rent. As always, stay informed, stay smiling, and stay LALATE.